This video was brought to you by Raycon. Oh boy, it's Raycon's anniversary, and here I am with nothing to show for it. I am a lousy boyfriend. But that's okay, Raycon's new Essential Open earbuds are too busy still in the spotlight, being 30% off to even notice. These aren't your average earbuds. These sleek and cool buds wrap around my ears so nice I barely notice I'm wearing them during my daily routines like cleaning the house or petting my cat. And yes, that is part of my routine. Get a cat, you'll understand. They sit just outside of your ear canal so you can rock out to music and podcasts while still being aware of your surroundings, lasting 8 hours on a single charge with the rechargeable carrying case giving you 36 hours of total battery life, all while delivering the same premium audio quality as the big brands out there, but at half the price with over 3 million happy customers and a 30-day happiness guaranteed backing up your purchase. So don't wait up, I've been using Raycons for years because I genuinely think they're cool, especially during yoga workouts, and I want to help you save money when you can. Click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/SomeCallmeJohnnyOpen to get 30% off the Essential Open earbuds. That's buyraycon.com/SomeCallmeJohnnyOpen. You can also scan the QR code you see on the screen here. Ain't that fancy. Thank you as always for helping support my channel. Let's continue on with the show. The Nintendo DS was the new home for 2D Castlevania action, and despite some touchscreen jank here and there, Dawn of Sorrow was considered a great entry in the Metroidvania lineup. So right back to work Konami went, as the next game up to bat was not only planned for a holiday 2006 release, but it would also serve as a celebration of Castlevania's 20th anniversary. This was Castlevania Portrait of Ruin. And because it was an anniversary title, Koji Igarashi felt it was time to rewind the clock. No longer were we in the far-flung future in Japan where everyone's got a computer in their pockets, and for the record, we're never going there again as far as this continuity is concerned. We were going back to simpler times, World War II. Koji Igarashi felt a whip user should be the primary hero for this next adventure, but instead of making it a Belmont, which I think would be the obvious choice, maybe give Julius his own game and finally tackle that 1999 event, it was decided that this next game would be a sequel to Castlevania Bloodlines on the Sega Genesis. Which I have to say, in 2006, given that this game was never re-released on any platform, collection or otherwise, how many people were even aware that there was a Castlevania game on the Sega Genesis? I don't think I did initially, but when I found out there was, and because this game was going to be a sequel to it, I decided to give it a shot for myself via emulation, and I couldn't finish it back then. It kicked my ass. It wasn't until my Versus video of the game way back in 2012 that I finished it for the first time. God, I can't believe those videos are already 13 years old. Crazy to think that when I reviewed Bloodlines originally, you still needed a Sega Genesis to play it legit, but nowadays it's been finally properly re-released on multiple platforms, and I think you should give it a shot if you haven't already. It really does have a unique vibe that sets it apart from the other classic Castlevanias around that time. Still, it is bizarre to me that they decided to have this game tie into Castlevania Bloodlines of all games. But I mean, it's not like you need to play Bloodlines to enjoy Portrait of Ruin. It only matters if you'd like some additional context to some characters in the game's story. And even then, I think the game does a good enough job getting players up to speed because Bloodlines, it barely had a story in the first place. You travel across Europe, you kick Elizabeth's ass, punch Dracula in his crotch mouth. By the end of 2006 though, I was in full Castlevania fan mode thanks to playthroughs of the Sorrow games and Symphony of the Night. It was around then that I played Rondo of Blood for the first time on PC Engine. I started getting into the classic series and seeing what I've been missing out on, finding a new love and appreciation for the first game in Super Castlevania 4. I got Portrait of Ruin the day of its release, as it was one of my most anticipated games of that holiday season. And it helped that I didn't have a Nintendo Wii just yet, and there was nothing that interested me in the PlayStation 3's launch library, and I wouldn't get my first Xbox 360 until 2008. But the Nintendo DS was there for me, and back then, that's all that mattered to me. This baby had my back for so many years, and I'm happy I'm finally starting to talk about this game today because I won't bother with any pretense here. This is one of my favorite games in the series, for various reasons that I hope I can properly explain. I played the fuck out of this game since 2006. I still have my original game cartridge on the DS with all my save files still intact. This game just clicked with me as a Metroidvania enjoyer back then, but as a Castlevania fan today, it's obvious this game is such a clear love letter to everything that made Castlevania so goofy and cheesy during its heyday, and I'm very much aware this game has some pretty glaring jank to it which I'll get into. and some aspects of it haven't aged the best, especially as I get older and more impatient, but I'll say this now, Castlevania Portrait of Ruin is a lovely celebration of the series and a damn fun game. Let's get into it. Set in 1944 Europe during the Second World War, Portrait of Ruin stars two heroes for this adventure. Jonathan Morris, son of John Morris from Castlevania Bloodlines, who I assume got his hair color from his mother's side, and then there's Charlotte Ullen, magical prodigy that at just the age of 16 is already a much better mage than any of the Belnati's clan. The church has sent these two to investigate this large looming castle that's mysteriously appeared recently, believing it to be none other than Dracula's humble abode, Castlevania. And sure enough, just after a few minutes within the doorstep, and a chase involving a half-decayed behemoth, a mysterious ghost within preferring to be called Wynn informs the two hunters that their assumptions are correct. This is Castlevania, but it's not Dracula behind the wheel this time, rather a vampire by the name of Bronner that has taken control of the castle using the power of his magical paintings. Ugh, great, an art major. Alongside Bronner are his daughters Stella and Loretta, two vampire sisters specializing in magic and swordplay that are not actually the daughters of Bronner, since Bronner's children were killed in the First World War, and consumed with grief and anger, Bronner became a vampire and used the souls lost during the Second World War to fuel his powers to bring back Castlevania and ready his plans to plunge the world into complete darkness.
Everybody got that?
Stella and Loretta are in fact the daughters of Wind that were converted to vampirism against their will when they attempted to rescue their father from Bronner's wrath. It's revealed that Wind is actually the ghost of Eric Lacard, John Morris's spear-wielding buddy from Castlevania Bloodlines that apparently dyed his hair sometime after Bloodlines. I guess blonde was going out of vogue? Eric pleads with Jonathan and Charlotte to not only stop Bronner from gaining ultimate power, but rescue his daughters from their grim fate. But it's an uphill battle for Jonathan and Charlotte, as they not only have to deal with Bronner, the sisters, and whatever evil forces await inside the paintings, but Dracula's forever roommate, Death, also roams the hallways looking for the right opportunity to revive his lord and master. To make matters even more complicated, Jonathan cannot fully utilize the power of the Vampire Killer, the legendary whip of the Belmont clan, passed down from his father John Morris after he suffered an untimely death. According to Wynn, it was predicted by Nostradamus that a Belmont would once again wield the whip to defeat Dracula once and for all in the year 1999, but with the Belmonts currently out of action doing God knows what, the Vampire Killer was bestowed to the Morris family for safekeeping. But since the Morris family aren't Belmonts, they can't tap into the whip's full power without taking the necessary steps, which Jonathan doesn't know what that is since his father never bothered telling him before he suddenly died. Eventually, Eric reveals the truth to Jonathan that his father passed away because of the Vampire Killer, as the whip drains the vitality of anyone using it that's not a Belmont. And John Morris, despite being a badass in his own way, simply used it too much and wanted to spare his son a similar fate. I'm gonna assume John's death was very sudden because I don't know why he couldn't just tell his son, hey, the whip's bad news, maybe we should put it in the Disney vault until the Belmonts need it again. But later on, if you want to, you can unlock the whip's full power by fighting against the memory of the last Belmont that wielded the Vampire Killer. This turns out to be, Richter Belmont? Wait a fucking minute here. This game is set in the 1940s and Richter Belmont used the whip in the late 1700s. Where the fuck did the Belmonts go in the last 140 years? I mean, this itself is brought up, I think, in Order of Ecclesia, the next game after this, and Belmonts are known to skip generations regarding who gets to use the whip, but still, that's a long fucking gap. Did the Belmonts get bored of the damn thing, or are they in cahoots with Nostradamus to help his bullshit predictions for profit? What the fuck? However, with Charlotte and her magical spells by his side, and thanks to Jonathan specializing in a bunch of other combat skills and weaponry, the two are still more than capable of stopping all matter of evil lurking within the walls, with or without the Vampire Killer. And it should be said, if you manage to unlock the full power of the whip, you don't actually have to worry about it killing you in gameplay. I don't think the devs want it to be that mean. I'm gonna guess it works like tobacco. Jonathan's fine for now, but in 30 years time, oh, your lungs are fucked, buddy. Well, Jonathan may not be able to wield the Vampire Killer effectively, but there's still other types of whips he can equip to get some long-range action going. Personally, I love the Nebula because of how it homes in on the closest enemy. It's the closest you'll get to a multi-directional whip attack because Jonathan sadly doesn't have that naturally. Later on, he gets a diagonal attack that only aims downwards, and he even gets the whip dangly thing, but I'm like, okay, Simon could do so much more. And shit, I don't mean to bring up sensitive subjects, but even Jonathan's dad can aim in more directions and even swing on ceilings. Jonathan can't do that. All he gets later is he okay? But if whips aren't your cup of tea, you can rock broadswords or spears or claymores or good old fisticuffs that I don't really like using personally. I want to whip the fucking shit out of things, goddammit. And supplementing these are sub-weapons, with almost all the classics being here with the exception of the stopwatch that's conspicuously absent yet again. I don't get it. Did it say something racist? With Jonathan though, sub-weapons aren't something you get intermittently through candles, they're permanent upgrades in Portrait of Ruin, and you equip them like any other piece of equipment in the game. He also doesn't have to worry about a heart counter for ammo, because like Soma, both characters utilize mana to fuel special attacks, making sub-weapons feel like a proper secondary attack more than it's ever been, so by all means, use those sub-weapons liberally. The more you use them, the stronger they become, since in Portrait of Ruin, Jonathan can slowly increase his mastery of sub-weapons with repeated use, transforming them into stronger attacks after you accumulate enough skill points. A standard proficiency system. Granted, with some of them, you gotta grind the fucking shit out of them, and if you're not using a couple of exploits, that can take quite a long time, even when you know the proper spots. But it's absolutely not mandatory at all to really master any sub-weapon. I went several playthroughs where I just used what I had, and I was more than fine. Portrait of Ruin gives you a surplus of weapons to fuck around with anyway. I don't think we needed 2 variants of throwing knives and shuriken, but I think they were just trying to go with the Symphony of the Night route with just giving you a shitload of variety for no other reason than just because. But this is just Jonathan I'm talking about here. Charlotte's a walking arsenal in her own way. With her magical tome, yeah, she can attack physically just like Jonathan, and later on it's actually not that bad considering how much vertical coverage you get from it. But her main appeal is her plethora of magic spells that she can earn by exploring the castle, getting them from enemy drops, or buying them from the store hosted by her church pal Vincent, who's a total bitch. Each spell requires a brief cast time, with some taking longer than others, but with just a simple push of a button, Charlotte can shoot streams of fire, homing wind projectiles, icicle spikes that shred through enemies with proper placement, acidic bubbles, chain lightning, she can summon familiars, giant fire salamanders, she can buff stats, heal status effects, restore health, pose for the camera. Shit, are we sure she can't use the vampire killer? Charlotte rocks, she can cover so much ground, but because her spells frequently require momentary cast times, and if you want them to hit harder you have to charge for even a bit longer, I feel she doesn't outright replace Jonathan, because Jonathan, you know, as the physical guy, he gets up close and personal with enemies right the fuck away. Charlotte is your standard squishy mage. She's a little more fragile, so she's better playing it safe from a distance. And thanks to her mana regeneration being inherently better than Jonathan's, she always has mana ready for the next spell. And hell, the game still has consumables like potions, mana refills, and food to give Jonathan and Charlotte a bunch of ways to keep themselves healthy and ready to go, which you can thankfully find all over the castle, or you can buy them at Vincent's shop. Exploring the castle can even give Jonathan and Charlotte these combination attacks, where the two join their powers to do a super, often area-encompassing attack ranging from holy lightning, a shitload of throwing knives, which I fucking love. I think it's underrated as fuck. You could summon a giant meteor, the classic holy cross, and one of the best later on is the greatest 5, where you summon the spirits of Belmonts and nuke whatever's on the screen, including a 2D rendition of Leon Belmont from the 3D era. And oh look, Juice is here too. So they remember him. They remember Juice. There's Juice right there. Where's the fucking furniture? Jonathan and Charlotte complement each other very well. They're legit some of my favorite characters in the franchise. They both control like dreams. They have a humongous variety of attacks and abilities. They give you plenty of options for obstacles ahead, including getting access to traditional movement upgrades that make exploring the castle easier to accomplish. Having 2 characters also inherently just increases replayability for me, because sometimes when I don't feel like using both characters at once, I like to see what I can tackle with Jonathan alone or maybe Charlotte alone, with both having their own pros and cons to balance the equation. But the best thing about these two, really the best thing about the whole game, is that you can just switch between Jonathan and Charlotte whenever you want with the push of a button. And thankfully, it's a lot faster than in Castlevania 3. It's even faster than switching characters in Julius mode. Hell, you can have both characters out at once to really lay on the damage, and the AI on your partner is usually fine enough. But you risk draining your mana very quickly, since if your partner takes any damage while they're out, it drains from your MP instead. So if you're not careful, you're not only down a partner for a short time, you also can't use special attacks without consuming mana points or waiting for the manual recharge. Portrait of Ruin puts a strong emphasis on the power of teamwork, and nowhere is it exemplified more than with Jonathan and Charlotte. Certain parts of the castle require both characters putting their work in, pushing objects to reach higher areas or reveal new passageways, or activating contraptions while the others wait to trigger something else. You can also jump kick off of each other's heads, ow, that doesn't look fucking pleasant, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Admittedly, these moments of teamwork are few and far between, and not every moment is particularly well designed. I don't like this bit with the motorcycles because of how disorienting it can be. constantly switching between characters to keep the bikes going, even if it doesn't last particularly long. There's a few times where Charlotte needs to use a proper spell to transform either herself or Jonathan into a frog or an owl to explore unreachable areas, but it doesn't quite hit the same as the standard transformations in Symphony of the Night because you have to pause the game, equip the spell, and then you cast a spell, and then you can get a move on. It's nowhere near as snappy. And then there's this bit. Firstly, what the fuck was that about? Secondly, how are Jonathan and Charlotte not meat paste after getting hit by a train going Mach 3? Thirdly, why was there a fucking train heading towards me at Mach 3? I never understood this part. It's so out of nowhere, and the two don't even make mention of it. Maybe if I paused the game immediately afterwards and chose the talk command? I don't know, but yeah, that's something you can do, I guess. If you get lost or you need a tip or two on what to do next, you can choose the talk command in the menu and listen to what Jonathan and Charlotte have to say. It makes for some fun dialogue. You really get a sense that these two care for each other in a sibling-like manner.
Even so, the two brave vampire hunters, I envy you.
She's like my kid sister.
Jonathan, stop treating me like a child.
Oh yeah, I guess I should mention, we have English voice acting again. Haven't seen this in 2D Castlevania since Symphony of the Night, I think. It's mainly relegated to boss fights, special attacks, and magical spells, oh boy. I hope you like Charlotte's voice because she screams out her spell names whenever they're fully charged. It can be quite a nuisance. Besides that, the acting's pretty good, but I don't think that's saying much in this game. You can also freely switch between English and Japanese voices when you hold down a button in the main menu.
Showtime!
And to my surprise, the Japanese voice for Jonathan is Takahiro Sakurai. The dude has been voicing Cloud Strife for the last 23 years, starting all the way back in the first Kingdom Hearts game. And if you're curious, Jonathan's English voice actor is Liam O'Brien, which as a Sonic fan, With the power of teamwork on their side, Jonathan and Charlotte explore not only Castlevania, but the numerous paintings within that host these kind of pocket dimensions, leading to entirely different locales in a way that sort of calls back to Castlevania Bloodlines, where that game had you going all across Europe, in addition to the traditional castle. Yeah, the castle itself is also something you explore as before, don't get me wrong, but the major set pieces are the levels within the paintings, each containing their own miniature world to explore, in a pretty linear fashion to boot. If I had to compare it to another game I reviewed, it's like how Shantae and the Pirate's Curse established its world map. Jonathan and Charlotte will be taken to locales like European towns hosting giant jellyfish, and a dude pathetically down bad for any girl in the immediate vicinity. Paintings also include punishing desert sands filled to the brim with mummies, skeletons, and booby-trapped pyramids that host even more hazardous obstacles like infinite balls of destruction. Desolate academia hallways where the only lessons being taught here are lessons of pain, and bee infestations, and mold growth, demon spawns. There's so much shit happening here, and the boss battle is a fish frog. Very unique. Yeah, and there's also the Nation of Fools, and later on the Burnt Paradise. These places suck, I won't mince words. These are my least favorite areas in the game, and looking at the screen, you might think it's because everything gets all topsy-turvy and lopsided. And I guess that's part of it, and thank fuck it doesn't have any anti-gravity bullshit. But the map design is so meandering and a pain in the ass to fully explore too, its only saving grace being that it has a lot of those HP and MP max upgrades that permanently increase your health and mana. I'm glad the game brought these back to incentivize exploring, but there's also still a lot of other items and weapons and equipment you can get just by exploring the map, killing enemies, or breaking objects. Portrait of Ruin constantly rewards your curiosity, stimulating that sense of enjoyment I get from that continuous discovery. And on top of that, Wind even offers you side quests that encourage performing specific feats or checking out parts of the map to reward you with additional equipment or abilities or stat upgrades. A few of them are a little grindy, and some require backtracking in areas I'd rather not go back to. But I think the rewards often make up for the added time spent. Like, it's how you're getting some of Jonathan's best sub-weapons, so I think they're worth the effort. And hell, I'd encourage stocking up on what you can when you can, because Portrait of Ruin, especially in the opening hour or so, can be surprisingly difficult. Less so on standard enemies, most go down with little problem, except for some fucking reason the cave trolls and the optional Nest of Evil. This is basically like the game's battle arena from Circle of the Moon, but with no stupid restrictions, and you can leave to restore your health and items after every checkpoint. But I guess to balance the scales, they made some enemies hit obnoxiously hard, and none demonstrate this more than the cave troll. They were some of the most innocuous enemies in Symphony of the Night, but here, they're juiced up on something illegal, and all I'm saying is, I want to know who the dealer is. I'm looking for those hookups. Boss fights can push your shit in with how hard some of them smack you around. Some even take advantage of your partner dynamic, like with Astarte here. She has a temptation attack that, if it manages to hit Jonathan, he gets brainwashed and starts fighting for her. So now Charlotte has to fight against both the boss and Jonathan by herself. Some bosses are more vulnerable to physical or magical attacks. Shit, some bosses switch their current weaknesses to keep you on your toes, and a few bosses like to even the odds and make it a tag team match. But if you're feeling nostalgic, the Nest of Evil even brings back bosses from Dawn of Sorrow and Symphony of the Night. I guess it's easy to implement more content when you're just shamelessly reusing sprites and such from previous games. On one hand, I get the spirit behind it. Portrait of Ruin is the anniversary title, so it makes sense to bring back enemies from a bunch of other Castlevanias, ripped wholesale or otherwise. On the other hand, it's hard to ignore just how much Portrait of Ruin reuses from previous games, good lord, especially from Rondo of Blood and the Sorrow games, which wasn't that long ago at the time of this game's release. Also, Portrait of Ruin does the cardinal sin of having its own version of the inverted castle, so to speak. To go back to the story really quick, Jonathan and Charlotte discover a means to cure Eric's daughters of their vampirism when they locate the Sanctuary spell. Now, you don't have to use it during the boss battle, but if you beat them up, you get the bad ending where Bronner begs to stop attacking his children and then promptly fucks off with them to Tijuana or some other place, I don't know. But if you want the good ending, you gotta use the Sanctuary spell during the boss fight, and that is fucking miserable because Sanctuary's cast time is slower than Continental Drift, and Charlotte's completely helpless when she's casting it, so you gotta pray that the sisters don't target her for any attacks while Jonathan is trying his damnedest to distract them. Fuck this part hard. But alright, you managed to use the spell, the sisters are cured, that just leaves Bronner. But he sealed himself up in his master painting, the dick, which requires tackling 4 other paintings to unlock it. The 4 paintings, 13th Street, Dark Academy, Forgotten City, and Burnt Paradise, are basically revisions of the 4 previous areas, ending with encounters with classic Castlevania villains like the Medusa, the Creature, the Mummy, and the Werewolf, not too dissimilar to how Symphony of the Night did it. Still, outside of hosting stronger enemies, aesthetically, they're almost one-to-one the same as the previous levels. I mean, City of Haze and 13th Street can't even spell Market Street correctly, what the fuck? These places share very similar level designs, only you go through them backwards and such. They're not terribly difficult to traverse, but I always considered this the low point of the game because of just how uninspired it feels. If Bronner was a villainous painter in today's age, these would be AI generated, and come on Bronner, I'd rather you fucking use lead paint. On top of the large number of reused enemies, Portrait of Ruin's world design can come off as lazy. But I don't think it was laziness, I just think, considering the game was only a year after Dawn of Sorrow's release, I figured the devs had to cut costs and development time when they could to meet a deadline. Which would also explain why Portrait of Ruin is one of the buggier games in the series by far. Not to the point of it being broken and unplayable, no, the game runs perfectly fine, but back in the game's launch, you couldn't skip the cutscene after the fight against death, otherwise you risk soft locking the game because the doors that lead out wouldn't open. This was thankfully patched for the Dominus collection, so you don't gotta worry about that now. Occasionally, room assets would fail to load properly, and what you got was a jumbled mess of graphic tiles. It happened to me live during a charity event I participated in several years ago when I was playing the original DS release.
What's going on? The backgrounds, it's all warped and jangling. I'm standing on 9s.
It can still happen in the Dominus collection, as I found out in a second playthrough. The fuck was in that wall meat, man? Notoriously, by touching a specific part of the touchscreen in your inventory, the game highlights a potion you don't have, meaning you have infinite potions to use at your disposal, so dying is next to impossible. You can get infinite money by repeatedly accepting and selling a reward you get from completing a side quest. If you press the start button as the game says you got said item, the game doesn't register the quest complete, but still gives you the reward, so you can simply head over to Vincent just over on the next screen, sell him the item, go back to win, get the item again, repeat as long as you want. And yet you're damn right I did that to get the good shit early, including 2 master rings for Jonathan, so that I can master skills much faster as I played the rest of the game normally. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. If I know I can do it, I do it. And like I said, grinding for skill points can be a real chore. Almost as bad as soul farming in the Sorrow games, or farming in general in Circle of the Moon. I don't find the farming as bad here because you're not farming RNG, you're just farming to watch number go up. And there's no luck involved in that, like it will happen as long as you just commit to killing things. If you have both characters out, you can use the touchscreen to control the second character separately. You make them jump, switch main control over to them, and if you're quick enough, you can jump again in mid-air before you get the double jump, allowing you to sequence break areas like the Sandy Grave and skip most of it. You can even load story events backwards like I accidentally did with the first Bronner cutscene. So are they just rehearsing the speech, or do they not realize I'm standing right behind them? Aspects of this game were clearly rushed and not thought out as well as they could, but strangely, I also feel it adds to the game's charm. You know, Symphony of the Night is one of my favorite games of all time, but holy shit, you can break it in half if you so much breathed at it weird. Doesn't change the fact that it's considered one of the best Metroidvanias of all time. Portrait of Ruin, as I just demonstrated, has its share of goofiness too, but Portrait of Ruin is a very goofy game, and I'd argue it was on purpose, because it harkens back to a time when Castlevania was less about being an anime set in the Baroque time period, and more when it was about fighting Count Dracula and his army of creatures from a 1950s Hammer era film. I mean, spoiler warning, Dracula's in this game, and he's the true final boss, since once you unlock Bronner's painting and take him and his wiggly fingers out, Death drops by to deliver the killing blow and unlocks Dracula's power to resurrect his old buddy. But check it out, look at his design. That's straight up his old school Bela Lugosi look from the NES games, and I love it so much. It's hard to explain, but Portrait of Ruin feels like a Castlevania game that's proud to be a Castlevania game, if that makes any sense. A reflection of 20 years of adventures through numerous incarnations of demonic castles, landscapes, and more clock towers than I can fucking count. My god, you can hear it in the soundtrack, and this soundtrack is one of my absolute favorites in the series, as it's not only Michiru Yamane returning, but she's joined alongside motherfucking Yuzo Koshiro for this game, of Streets of Rage and ActRaiser fame, among a lot of other shit. The result is a perfect blend of bopping, percussion-filled, slam-dancing, old-school feeling Castlevania music that fills my ears with so much joy. It's so damn good, man. It pays respects to all eras of Castlevania around this time, both classic and Metroidvania style, both good games and terrible. Dark Academy's track is another goddamn remix of a Haunted Castle song. Why were they so infatuated with shit? After enough side quests, you can get this phonograph that allows you to play music you can find in the castle or buy in the shop, and one of those tunes is Simon's theme from Super Castlevania 4. When I get to the second half of the Dracula fight, I like doing the Super Castlevania 4 thing and change the music to Simon's theme because I think it's such a cool and awesome way to cap off the game. And what a concept too, again emphasizing the teamwork nature of the game's structure. Dracula and Death joined forces to take on Jonathan and Charlotte simultaneously, and then they fused together in the second part of the fight. What a badass looking demon, man. It kind of reminds me of Dracula's final form in Bloodlines without the fire breath coming from his crotch. But Jonathan and Charlotte's teamwork proved too much for Dracula and Death in the end, and with Vampire Killer in hand, the final blow is dealt to Dracula, and once more the morning sun vanquishes the horrible night. It's a bittersweet ending though. With Castlevania destroyed and Eric's daughters properly rescued, Eric feels he can finally cross over to the afterlife, leaving his daughters distraught, but hopeful for the future as Jonathan and Charlotte prove that teamwork can make the dream work. And that's just the main campaign. Portrait of Ruin has 3 other alternate modes. God damn. Beating the game normally will get you Sisters mode, chronologically taking place before the events of the main games, so you know, it doesn't end well for them. I don't hate this mode, but the novelty wears thin pretty fast. In the original DS release, it's entirely touchscreen based. You use the stylus to attack enemies with either a bombardment of ice magic or quick swings with your stylus. In the Dominus collection, you also have the option of using the right analog stick as a makeshift stylus, but it feels so clumsy to use in this context, so I ended up using the mouse to simulate the DS's stylus. And it works about as well as I remembered. It's interactive in a pretty fun way. There's something to enjoy with just destroying things from a safe distance, and I don't find it nearly as cumbersome as the touchscreen stuff that plagued Dawn of Sorrow, but I feel this wasn't ultimately needed. Given the lack of story and because the sisters can literally fly anywhere they need to go from the beginning, you can beat this mode in less than 2 hours, about an hour and a half, probably lesser if you know the layout well enough. Next up is Richter mode, unlocked if you manage to beat the Whip's memory in the main story, the fight against Richter Belmont. Easier said than done for the record. Richter hits like a fucking truck in this fight, but his remix theme is so damn good, dude. Oh! If you want to stand a better chance, it's best if you exploit his weakness to Dark Elemental attacks. And you know what's Dark Elemental in Portrait of Ruin? Cream pies. I'm not fucking joking. Chuck that shit at him like he's Boo Boo the Fool. And that's how I easily destroyed Count Dracula once and for all.
That's bullshit! Jonathan!
Richter mode places you in control of Richter and Maria in their Rondo of Blood incarnations, which makes sense. The game already borrows a lot from Rondo of Blood already, so why not go the whole 9 yards? And holy hell, this is the best Richter has ever controlled, and that includes his Symphony of the Night incarnation. Yeah, he can't spam his aerial dash like he could in that game, but he's super fast on the ground, his double jump is buttery smooth, his super jump is wickedly easy to execute with just a simple push of a button, and he hits like a pissed off gorilla. It's such a stark comparison to his humble beginnings in Rondo of Blood. This Richter is awesome. I wish I could say the same for Maria though. She still attacks with magical doves and other assortment of animals, but what made her unique and accessible in Rondo of Blood is now commonplace for all Castlevania protagonists, and some of her most damaging attacks like her Guardian Fist have been considerably nerfed, so there's little reason to use her when Richter is just as, if not more capable, with taking care of enemies. Fuck man, Maria is just okay. Also, I feel a girl her age really shouldn't be hanging around this particular incarnation of the castle. What the fuck? Pederast! Oh Jesus, and Astarte tries to pull off the temptation attack on her too? Good grief, that man is naked! These guys are naked! Oh, bad touch! Who the fuck is in charge here? Count Epstein? Richter mode is your standard alternate mode otherwise. No story, you just get to the end as fast as you can with a crap ton of movement abilities, but limited healing options since you have no access to inventory or healing items. You do get stronger the more enemies and bosses you kill, and you can still grab those HP and MP maxes for stat gains. So there's still incentive for exploring and fighting instead of just ignoring everything by. And take it from me, you want to take some time to level up because in Richter mode, the final boss against Dracula and Death is such an obnoxious difficulty spike given your limited options that the only way you can feasibly win is by playing the numbers game. It's so weird too because until this specific fight, you can comfortably take care of every other area in the game with little issue. I was only level 28 when I reached the end of the game. That's around like 5 or 6 levels below what I usually am with Jonathan and Charlotte at the end of the main story. But goddamn, they overtuned the shit out of these two. To borrow something my friend Matt would say, they hit like a bus full of fat kids. My Discord community can attest to this. I spent over an hour trying to beat these guys with my current stats, but I just couldn't do it. Mistakes were far too punishing. I was so fragile. So I had to whip out my gym routine and do some old-fashioned experience grinding. And it's not even for souls or items this time. It's just to see number go up. What the fuck, man? Why is Dracula so bullshit in Richter mode? Is it a Dracula X callback? They didn't need to reference every fucking thing. The last and final mode. Okay, so in Symphony of the Night, yeah, there was an armor you can get called the Axe Lord armor. When you put it on, you transformed into an old axe armor from Rondo of Blood, complete with limited maneuverability and attack options. Hell, you put your file name as Axe Armor, and you start with the Axe Lord armor already in your inventory, so you can attempt to play the whole game as this slow-ass Axe Armor. A comical gag mode, true and true. But Koji Igarashi and friends decided to bring this gag back as a full-on playable mode here, where you play as the entire game as an old Axe Armor. How do you unlock it? You kill 1,000 old axe armors in the main story. Just why? That's not funny. That's not even worth a hearty chuckle. That's just tedious. Yeah, I did it anyway. Good lord, what am I doing here? You can still double jump, you can super jump, even do a couple of special attacks in tribute to the classic enemy, but you have no other means of attack other than axe swings and an axe sub-weapon. As before, it's a gag mode, but like the Sisters mode, I think the novelty wears thin after a bit. Wait, Henry the Pederast hit on me. Is this axe armor a girl? Oh fuck yeah, look at that. Huh. Love that shade of red. Hey man, if you thought Dracula was impossible as Richter, I'm sure old axe armor is fucking crying underneath that armor. I couldn't beat Dracula in this mode without using the rewind feature the Dominus collection gives you. Like, I recall only beating this mode once on my original DS file, but I had to grind for hours just to comfortably get through the end game. It's not a memory I cherish. I do like seeing the old axe armor get caught up in Persephone's vacuum cleaner though. Just the way they just awkwardly tumble to the floor like me getting a leg cramp, like, oh fuck. Personally speaking, with Portrait of Ruin putting so much emphasis on teamwork, I find it a missed opportunity that there wasn't a Bloodlines mode, where you can control like John Morris and Eric LeCar from the Genesis games. Hell, they could have just ripped their sprites wholesale from the Genesis game and I would not give a shit. I think it would have been cool being able to switch between the two, utilizing both whip and spear. Yeah, I know they're both dead, but so are Richter and Maria. By 1944, I think that's a safe assumption anyway. Either way, yeah, Portrait of Ruin has problems, but damn, the game gives you so much bang for your buck with all the alternate modes, the 2 playable characters to have fun and experiment with, and as a Castlevania fan, it's clear a lot of love went into properly paying respects to the series for its anniversary. Yeah, I think that appeal loses some luster if, say, this is your first Castlevania title. A lot of references will likely just go right over your head. But I like to think, given the fun nature of the teamwork mechanics and attention to detail that I absolutely love about Koji Igarashi's Castlevania games, there's enough charm and personality to the game's settings and characters that I think Metroidvania fans will find endearing on a broader level. It looks great, it sounds wonderful, it's a Castlevania game that I think just wants you to have a good time. And with that said, we just have one more Castlevania game to look at before I give the series a well-deserved rest. It'll be some time before I go back to Castlevania after I look at Order of Ecclesia. Maybe only tangentially related when I decide to give the upcoming new Bloodstained game a look at, since that game is also rocking a partner mechanic, and it's looking to take a lot of notes from Portrait of Ruin. So here's hoping it's a good time. That said, Castlevania Order of Ecclesia is not the next game on the docket. I gotta go back and give the Spyro series some love, because it's been a bit since the first Spyro video went up, and it's like, when is he gonna get to the fucking fireworks factory? And that might be appropriate, because I think Spyro has fireworks in it, so thank you for waiting. And I'm getting to that right away. But before we wrap it up here, I have some more patrons to shout out, so thank you all very much for your continued love and support, especially for this year, because this year has been a roller coaster for me, like both physically and mentally speaking. But shout outs to Wilhelm's Cream, Edgar Flores, Aiden Miller, 129440006 Sliced Romas Tomatoes, Duskin Moth, Nevin Zerimus, Arsenic07, Lucky Short, Horace, Hydro, Dial and Tap, Mitch Music, I Win, Me, Cheeky Melon, Gonzo Beans 385, Lilypad 6199, K the Mad Witch, Mr. Black and White 98, Raven Betancourt, Nakagami Penguin, Alan Knight, Dirty Curdy, Serial Chiller, Spy the Cuttlefish, Boosted D Drag, Blank Screen TV, A Purple Dragon, Average Joe, Wolfang, Jawbreaker Alumni, Versatile, Dr. Flash 55, Carol Bloodgrave, Curved Swords 21, Solar Dragon 719, D Active, Silly Drago, TJ Sylvia Kage, Gizmo, Sonic 21 Blast, Blue Dino, One More Sonic Robot, Gumby, David Bolton Media, Manuel Gonzalez, yeah, I got that right, Thomas Bond, Crazy Armor, Daku Zamurai, Dom Nick, Kind Guy Dan, Deltix, Leaf Erickson, Hinger Dinger, Nicholas Mage, International Treasure, The Demon Man, Dan Moore, Hanson Aguatu, JMB723, Chase Warden, Kinger, is it Kinger Fan 99, Peyton Talented but Lazy, Gamer Zoro, Angry Doorman, Certified Rajong Hater, Mr. Tree Sapling, and finally for today, it's Bento! Oh no, actually, there are two Zacharys here next to each other, Zachary Heinley and Zachary Pascalar. I think that's how you pronounce that last name. Are they related? Are they a symbiotic being that share the same name, Zachary? I don't know. Makes you think. But either way, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. Again, thank you all so much for your loving patience as I'm getting ready for the end of this year. It's getting close to the holidays. You know, all the YouTubers and content creators are getting ready to pull out their big videos. And what does that mean for me? I don't know, probably Sonic Racing Crossworld. I admit it. But thank you all for watching. Have yourselves a fantastic night and take care.